In movies, the world ends with a bang. In real life, it would probably start with confusion, a bad headline, and everyone pretending it's fine for 10 more minutes than they should. This is a scenario walkthrough, not a prediction, not news, and not a promise that events would unfold exactly like this. If anything like a major conflict ever escalates, follow official instructions in your area and keep your decisions legal and safe. All right, here's what the first day of World War III could feel like for regular people in the United States, hour by hour, before most folks even realize the rules changed. Early morning, it begins the same way most big events begin now, with fragments. A clip that looks real, a post that might be fake, a shaky video, a headline that keeps updating so fast it feels like it can't be true. At first, nothing looks different outside your window. Coffee still brews. Traffic still builds. Someone still complains about a meeting like the world isn't shifting under their feet. But online, the tone changes. The language changes. You start seeing the same few words everywhere. Strike, response, escalation, unconfirmed, developing. And the first thing that really breaks people isn't fear, it's uncertainty. Because uncertainty makes everyone chase information, and that's where day one starts to crack. In the first hour, the country doesn't erupt into chaos. It hesitates. People refresh their phones. They message family. They look at the sky like the sky is supposed to explain something. News anchors try to be careful, but you can hear the stress in their pacing. If the situation is serious enough, you may start seeing official advisories and warnings. But here's the problem. Most people have never seen a true national-level emergency message in their life, so the first reaction is denial. It's a hack. It's propaganda. It's not real until I see it. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, government agencies and military planners would be shifting posture fast, even if you can't see it. And that gap between what you can see and what is happening is what makes people spiral. Mid-morning, the first real behavior shift hits. Not riots, not looting, movement. People try to do the same three things all at once. They try to get cash, they try to get fuel, they try to get supplies. And because we run on just-in-time everything, the shelves don't need a week to look bad. They can look bad in one morning. Grocery stores don't run out because the country is starving. They run out because thousands of people hit the same store in the same hour, and the store was never designed for that kind of load. Same with gas stations. Lines form fast, tempers spike fast. And once payment systems start slowing down, even a little, the mood changes hard. Because nothing triggers panic like realizing you can't pay for what you're trying to buy. Now add in the rumor problem. This is where the first day gets nasty. False reports spread faster than corrections. Somebody posts missiles in the air and gets 1 million views before anyone checks it. A weird cloud turns into chemical attack. A plane turns into incoming. A plane turns into incoming. A transformer flash turns into we're being hit. Even if nothing has happened locally, the psychological effect is real. People start acting like the danger is already on their street because they can't tell what's true. And that's how normal life fractures. Schools may close, even as a precaution. Companies may send people home. Cities may start enforcing curfews, not because it's guaranteed war has reached them, but because officials want to reduce movement and reduce risk while they figure out what's happening. By lunchtime, you get the second big shift. Communication becomes both a lifeline and a weapon. Everyone wants information. Everyone wants reassurance. Everyone wants to know where their people are. So networks overload. Towers get hammered. Systems slow down. And if cyber disruptions are part of the conflict, it gets worse. Not a dramatic internet disappears everywhere moment. More like patchy failures that spread. A bank site won't load, an ATM freezes, card readers fail at gas pumps, a store can't process payments, a hospital flips into backup procedures. And here's what makes it scary. A modern blackout doesn't just turn lights off, it disconnects you. No updates, no map, no easy contact, no quick confirmation. And in that silence, people fill the gaps with imagination, which is almost always worse than reality. Mid-afternoon, the economy starts doing weird things. Markets could halt, trading could pause, volatility could spike. Not because money is fake, but because markets hate uncertainty more than bad news. That doesn't just hit investors, it hits delivery, it hits business confidence, it hits logistics, it hits paychecks. And the moment people suspect that the normal flow of money and goods is unstable, behavior changes. People stop thinking in months. They start thinking in days. How many meals do we have? How much fuel? How much cash? What if the store is empty tomorrow? What if we can't get prescriptions? You also start seeing a strange old-school behavior return. Neighbors talk in person again, not because they suddenly became friendly, but because phones are unreliable and everyone's nervous. You'll see people across fences asking, "You hearing anything? You got power? Your water okay? You think this is real?" Some neighborhoods get more unified, other neighborhoods fracture instantly, and that depends on trust, not politics. Trust is the real currency when systems wobble. As evening hits, the mood shifts again. Night is always worse, not just because it's dark, but because it feels like you're blind. Power outages feel bigger at night. Rumors feel bigger at night. Every siren feels like a sign. If there are rolling blackouts, it becomes a patchwork. One block lit, one block dark. Traffic lights out, stores shuttered, streets quieter than they should be. Curfews, if implemented, change the whole vibe. A city with a curfew feels like a different country. Even if nothing is happening on your street, the message is clear. Something's wrong. By late night, the first day ends the way a lot of modern crises end, not with a clear answer, with a heavy quiet. People sit in living rooms with battery lights, they ration phone charge, they check radios if they have them, they try to sleep but don't really sleep. And the hardest part is this. On day one, most of America might not be under attack in the physical sense, but they're no longer at peace mentally. Because once you believe the system can break, you never look at normal life the same way again. Then morning comes again. And it doesn't feel like a reset. It feels like a continuation. Stalled cars, empty gas stations, stores still closed, spotty signal, people counting what they have, not what they want. And that's the real takeaway. In a modern large-scale war, the first casualties aren't always buildings. They're certainty, routine, and the assumption that help and information will always arrive on time. So if you're watching this and thinking, okay, what do I actually do with that? Keep it boring. Know your essentials: water, food, meds, light, communication, cash, and a plan for your household. Don't obsess over rumors. Don't wait until the crowd moves to decide what you think. And don't build your safety around the idea that systems will behave politely during panic. Stay safe, stay calm, stay legal, and keep your plan simple enough to follow when your brain is stressed.